Hello and welcome back to the Scenario 7 podcast YouTube channel. My name is Sam and this is week 18 of our F1 Fantasy Show. In this episode, we'll be looking back at how we did in Singapore, talking about price changes and looking ahead to this weekend's Japanese Grand Prix, going through Matt's team and any alternatives he might look to swap in before the deadline. But before anything else, let's introduce our fancy expert, Matt Collier. How are you doing, mate?
I'm doing good, thank you, Sam. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing well. And before going into price changes and all that, let's look back at Singapore, where we will have a look to see where we all sit in the Scenario 7 podcast fantasy table, starting with Performer of the Week, where we look at the person who got the most points from the last race. And in Singapore, it was Dias with 269 points. He's been hovering around the top of the table for a while, and I don't believe this is his first time as Performer of the Week. I believe he has been before, but I might be wrong, of course. In his team, he had Leclerc, who got him 45 points. Sergio Perez, turbo driver, got him 90. Sainz, who got him 28. Stroll, who got him 26. Bottas, who got 15, and Red Bull, who got 65. So a very good effort from him. Now to the top of the table, and it is still Andrew T retaining his spot with 3,496 points. The person in second is within 100 points. So there's still potential that it could change, but he has used his mega driver and Andrew hasn't. So realistically, it's going to be a colossal effort for this to go wrong for him. Matt, you are up 2 places to 13th. You've been on a steady incline for a while now, and you've kept that up this week. You are on 3,177 points. Without going into too much detail, were you pleased with your performance?
Yeah, I'd say it was good. It could have been a lot better. I did have two DNFs. The thing that kind of really saved me was the two streaks. But yeah, I was 16th for the week. It's kind of below where I really want to be. I kind of want to be around the top 10 in the week in order to progress. But yeah, still a good weekend and a good amount of points.
Yeah, certainly a good amount of points. A very solid performance from you. And now to me, and after losing 4 places last week, I have gained 2 places back to 30th place on 2,925 points. I got 197 points in Singapore. I had Perez, who got me 45, Leclerc turbo driver, who got me 90, Alonso got me 1, Ocon got me -9, Magnussen got me 5, and Red Bull, who got me 65. To be honest, any other week, I would be happy with my performance. You know, around the 200-point mark is generally where I aim most weeks. But the thing that really frustrates me is before the deadline, Matt, I showed you a draft. It had both Stroll and Ricardo in. I had an inkling they were going to do well. It did have Russell in as well, so forget about that bit. But it had Stroll and Ricardo. I was telling you how they were going to do really well this week. This is going to be Aston Martin's great. It all was in my head, and I thought, you know what? No need to change the team. And I've kind of regretted that, but at the same time, the person I would have swapped out is Perez, who was the eventual race winner. So yeah, it swings and roundabouts really, but I am frustrated that if I could have just brought in Stroll and Ricardo for the two Alpines like I'd planned, then it'd have been a much better week and I'd have been up there towards the top of the table for that race week. But let's go more in depth with your team for last week. Matt, can you talk us through last week's selection?
Yeah, sure. So I got a total of 222 points. I'll start with the first driver. That was Fernando Alonso. Once again, reliability hinders him. He was looking on course for like I think P6. I think Norris was in front of him. Fortunately, DNF got 1 point, and yeah, Alpine's reliability isn't looking very good at the moment. Alpine have now been overtaken by McLaren. So yeah, Alonso, of course, DNF'd in Singapore, DNF'd in Italy, and yeah, bit concerning. Still managed to get 1 point, so no negative points for Alonso, so it wasn't too bad. On to my next driver, Sergio Perez, of course, won the race, got loads of good points, especially the beating his teammate bonus, which he did in qualifying and the race. Got a total of 45 points. Brilliant race from Sergio Perez. On to our next driver, Alex Albon, another DNF. I think I had him for Monaco when he DNF'd in the wet, and I didn't really learn from my mistake. But yeah, Albon got -7 points. Yeah, Albon in the wet kind of just gives me low confidence, to be honest. It's not promising. Yeah, he got me -7 points. Carlos Sainz got me 28 points. Of course, finished on the podium. Definitely struggled with pace, but once again, he's in a quick Ferrari. My turbo driver for that week was Charles Leclerc. He got 90 points, and yeah, I might as well talk about it now. I remember saying in the last show about Leclerc's price exceeding 20 million, and yeah, I was going into the weekend, something popped up on my phone saying that my turbo drive been changed from Leclerc to Perez, but lucky it was after the race weekend. And yeah, he got that race streak of +10. Leclerc, to be honest, it wouldn't have mattered because Perez got 45 and Leclerc got 45. And yeah, my constructor got 65 points. It was a bit of a difficult weekend. Verstappen's side of the garage. But yeah, once again, that race streak came in clutch, very important, and got 65 points for Red Bull, totaling to 222 points. Did get 2 DNFs, so that was the potential for possibly another 20 more points. But yeah, still a good weekend.
Yeah, certainly a good weekend. And bearing in mind how many cars did DNF in Singapore, it's not as if you got like the one driver who DNF'd. I mean, I think it was 6 drivers who didn't finish the race. You had Hamilton going into a wall who finished. You had Verstappen massively locking up, so didn't get as many points as he could have done. So it was a totally unpredictable race. And to be honest, to get 222 points, I think it's a really strong effort. Time to look at some price changes. And as always, there have been several fluctuations since the last race and will continue to be up until the deadline. What we talk about now is the prices at the time of recording and are likely to change. So, Matt, let's start with the drivers. What changes stand out to you?
Yeah, just to fill in, there's been 27 price changes, one more than last week, and yeah, I expect the market to be mental until the final race. But yeah, onto the drivers. Leclerc's gone from 20.3 up to 20.9 million, increase of 0.6. And most importantly, we now can't use him as a turbo driver, so other alternatives have to be considered. Speaking of the alternatives, Sergio Perez has gone from 19.2 million up to 19.7 million, increase of 0.5. And yeah, I expect his price to go over 20 million by the end of the season. That could also see a spike in Sainz's price as well. I remember saying there's literally 3 you can pick, and we're now down to 2, and eventually we'll be down to 1 and just Sainz. But yeah, Carlos Sainz has gone from 18.0 million up to 18.3 million, increase of 0.3. On some decreases, Hamilton is still plummeting down in price. He's gone from 26.3 million down to 25.2 million, decrease of 1.1. Daniel Ricciardo, despite having a really good race out in Singapore, he's gone from 9.7 down to 8.7, decrease of 0.1. And Yuki Tsunoda is now the cheapest driver on the market. He's gone from 6.1 million down to 5.4 million, decrease of 0.7.
Poor Sonoda, man. I mean, he's the shortest driver on the grid anyway in terms of height, and now he's the lowest driver in terms of price. But you filled us in on some driver changes. What about constructors?
Yeah, so constructors, it's basically always two increases every week, and that is Red Bull and Ferrari. Red Bull have gone from 35.8 million up to 36.6 million, increase of zero point 0.8. Ferrari have gone from 27.8 up to 28.4, increase of zero point 0.6. Then all the rest of these are decreases. AlphaTauri have gone from 8.3 down to 7.6, decrease of 0.7. McLaren, despite having a very good weekend out in Singapore, have gone from 14.5 down to 13.9 million, decrease of 0.6. Mercedes have gone from 33.8 down to 33.4, decrease of 0.4. And finally, Williams have gone from 6.2 million down to 5.9 million, decrease of 0.2, and they are the cheapest constructor at the time of recording. Obviously, a lot of changes can happen, but yeah, they're the prices at the time of recording.
Yeah, some really interesting changes from quite a manic market, I think it's fair to say. Let's look at your team that you might be deploying this week. And of course, we need to preface this by saying this is subject to change as the deadline is not until Saturday, and practice sessions can be used as an insight into how teams will perform this weekend. So the first driver keeping his place is Fernando Alonso, costing 12 million. Why are you keeping the Alpine driver?
I just feel like he's such a good pick, but then he always gets so much bad luck. I remember throughout this season him having so many DNFs and problems. I think it was Australia when he did like a purple sector 2 and ended up crashing at one of the final corners. And yeah, he's had two DNFs in the last two races. Alpine definitely had loads of reliability problems, but yeah, as I said earlier, he's always up there. He's always around that P6, P7 mark, and yeah, his price has decreased, but I still think he's a very good option.
Yeah, a solid option who has been unlucky on several occasions this season, I think it's fair to say. Sergio Perez also keeps his place and becomes your turbo driver, priced at 19.7 million. So, as you said, might not be your turbo driver for too long. A race winner in Singapore. Why does he keep his place?
Yeah, as kind of explained earlier, you can't choose Leclerc anymore, and yeah, Perez seems like the obvious option, especially after his win in Singapore, and yeah, that's why he keeps placing my team.
Yeah, I think that's completely fair enough. Now moving on to your only change, Lance Stroll replaces the outgoing Alex Albon, valued at 9.1 million. Why did you decide to make this change?
Well, I just think like I feel like Stroll's more consistent. Albon's had a lot of whoopsies, and yeah, I still think Albon and Williams will do well this weekend, depending on the weather. This is a high-speed circuit, but then, as I explained earlier, Albon in the wet just doesn't look promising. He always has a whoopsie in him. I think at Monaco he got loads of like penalties as well because he was having an awful race. But yeah, I feel like Stroll's a more consistent driver. He's a lot more consistent than Albon, and yeah, Stroll had a very good race out in Singapore, so that's why I've brought him into my team.
Yeah, I mean, if there's a risk of rain, then Albon isn't necessarily the driver that you should have in your team. Carlos Sainz is the first of the two Ferraris in your team, costing 18.3 million. Why is Sainz keeping his place?
He's a very good solid option. He's in a quick Ferrari, finished on the podium out in Singapore, and yeah, I expect his price to keep increasing as the turbo driver chip will probably sway towards Perez and Sainz, and yeah, that's why I've kept him in my team. He's also a very good option as well.
Yeah, and Charles Leclerc is the final driver to complete your roster, completing a Ferrari double, 20.9 million. Why does he stay?
He's just been one of the standout picks of the whole season. it's a shame that I can't use my turbo driver chip on him because I've had him for so long as my turbo driver. And yeah, he's still a really good solid pick. You know, he's always getting poles and finishing on the podium. So yeah, that's why he keeps his place in my team.
Yeah, and it's time for the constructor. Red Bull remains the obvious choice at 36.6 million. For the people that don't know, why have you kept Red Bull?
But they had a bit of a difficult weekend. But yeah, I think this track definitely suits them as it's a high speed track. And yeah, they keep their place and look like a very good option as well.
Yeah, certainly a very good option. Hopefully, both sides of the garage do well this weekend as opposed to only one. We've gone through your team, but who are some alternatives you're potentially looking to swap in before the deadline and the people at home should consider putting in their teams?
Yeah, maybe I don't know maybe about should because every time I pick the constructor for the last four shows, they've double DNF'd or had an awful race. So maybe stay clear of the constructor pick that I choose, as they've always been doing rubbish. Especially Alpine. I didn't pick them last week and they still double DNF. So maybe I'm not a full-on curse, but yeah, going to the alternatives, I pick three. I do one constructor and two drivers. And the constructor I've gone for is Mercedes, currently priced at 30, 33.4 million. And yeah, I feel like their car might suit this track, depending on how the weekend goes. And they have a lot of experience at this track as well. And onto the two drivers, I've gone with Bottas, currently priced at 9.3 million. Of course, he won this race last time out in 2019, finishing first. And yeah, there's quite a few drivers that obviously haven't raced at this track, and I feel like some of the more experienced drivers should be able to outperform the least experienced drivers this weekend. And next up, Pierre Gasly, currently priced at 11.3 million. In the last two races, he's qualified in the top 10 and finished in the top 10. So yeah, looking very consistent at the moment. Gasly is, and yeah, they're alternatives you should consider for your team.
Yeah, some interesting picks there. So now you know Mercedes double DNF. Put your money on it now. It's happening this weekend. That wraps up our video. I hope you found it helpful. A reminder that the deadline for changes is qualifying. So get your team finalized by then. Remember to like and subscribe. Follow us on our socials, linked down below, along with our fancy league code if you'd still like to join. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.